So today we're going to do the complete AC system on this 2002 Toyota Sequoia. Now the purpose of this video is just to help out anybody else who's thinking about doing the same job or replacing an AC part. It'll help you see where it is and what you have to pull to get at it and how complicated it might be. So this is just meant as a quick reference. I'm not going to show all the little details about how to replace O-rings and how to turn bolts and that kind of thing. I'm going to make an assumption that if you're watching this, you are probably looking for a quick reference for how to tear this AC system apart or where a part might be located, not necessarily how to do all the little nitty-gritty things about working on AC systems. I may show a little bit of that as we go through it, just in passing, but for the most part, this is going to be a quick reference guide. So let's get into it. So we're basically going to rebuild the entire AC system on this vehicle. Now this is an older vehicle. This thing's like 20 years old at this point, so I haven't run the AC or anything. The customer brought it here and said, we just want to replace everything because it wants a new lease on life. So we're just going to do a total refresh on the AC system because that's what the customer wants. Real quick air conditioner parts location and run through for a 2002 Toyota Sequoia. Just real quick, got your compressor down there on the side of the engine on the 4.7 liter. Got your condenser in the front. Got your accumulator up here with your high side port. Got your low side port here. Everything else is in the cabin. The expansion valve is on the other side of these lines here, inside the cabin, inside the box with the evaporator core, which is buried up under there to access the evap core, and the expansion valve, you got to pull that down and out. And of course your controls are in the usual location. If you have the rear AC option, of course you've got ductwork running through the vehicle, but your rear AC is going to be behind this panel. There is a second expansion valve and a second evaporator core. And of course the lines that run back to this. I think the very first thing we're going to tackle is basically start ripping all of this apart. See it all the way back? First thing I'm going to do is pull the glove box out so I can work around it easier. And that is a screw and a screw. Okay, glove compartment's out. So this center section, it unclips on the bottom, but there's two screws on the top behind these vents, one here and one here. So basically you just push the vent down to get to the screw on each side. We'll take them out and then we'll pull this panel off. Screws are out. Now we can pull that off and down. You can see the HVAC unit plugs in down there. I'm going to take this upper trim piece off in the glove compartment. That's just 3 screws, one here, and one here. So take them out. You pull that down, and then your glove box lamp can be removed. I'll put these screws back in so I don't lose them. So you can get this duct out by pushing it this way and working it out that way. Now you can see the heater AC box. Before I go too much further, I'm going to pull the battery connection on this vehicle because I got the door open and I don't want to run the battery dead. Alright, for the lower center console, you gotta pop these out and you just basically pop the center section forward and then you can pull the whole thing out. This snaps in and out. Gotta get that on the other side. So after you get those two side clips out, you can pull out the four-wheel drive boot assembly. And there's 2 screws, one here and one here. And then in the glove compartment, there's 2 screws, one here and one here. You can unscrew this four-wheel drive handle. Take that boot off. And there's 2 more bolts under this section You can see them here and here. Just got to unplug any wiring you may have in there. Add that to the parts pile, and then we can take out these two bolts. And then if you have the rear climate controls, you can pop this control unit out, disconnect the wires. This needs to come off. So there's a bolt down here, and there's a bolt here, and there's some clips, and there's a bolt here, screw here, screw here. Let's pull those. So I got to pull this kick panel. This is going to have to come off. Let's pull this panel off. It overlaps the kick panel. Driver's side panel has to come down, so I'm going to pull out this screw, already pulled out those two at the joint. Alright, just going to let that dangle for now. Now I can get to this screw up here. There we go. Let me disconnect these wires here. So that gives us a much better view of what we've got working on in here. Alright, unplug your blower motor. Sorry, I called this the blower motor. This is the blower motor resistor. Alright, so if you pull the screw here, here, and then along the bottom, you can pull this center section out once you disconnect the lines in the engine compartment. Let's disconnect those lines. We'll vacuum the system, get all the refrigerant out, and then we'll disconnect those lines and pull this out. Alright, in order to get these lines off, Toyota says you need a special tool, and what you do is you insert it in these two holes right here. Not these two, the two on this side. See these two things that stick out? This is the side. In there, and then supposedly it'll release. I just love these proprietary clips of all kinds that manufacturers love to use. There we go. Okay, that is how you fight that off without the tool. Just gotta do it again down here. Let's see. There we go. So if you look at this, basically it's a metal clip and this plastic receiver part here, and they just snap together. So now we can just pull these lines. Oh, there's a little bit of a charge left in there. This is inevitable. Alright, and we can pull those off from the other side and then replace the O-rings when we put it back together. This box out. Now that we're loose, it should just pull right out, which it does. Okay. Take this over to the bench and rebuild it. Okay, so basically we're going to separate the two halves of the lid here. And we've got two screws, clamp, and then more screws all the way around, and we can get that half off. Well, the screws are out. Now when you separate this, make sure to cut your seal if you're planning on reusing it, which I am. You can slide this off of there. And of course the same thing over here. Just slit your seals there. Now up here, this goes through here and connects to the front of your core. So just unsnap that like that. This is your temperature sensor. And now you can take the top of your box off, set that out of the way. We will clean that. And now you can see the blower motor resistor pack in here, which of course you can change from the outside if you want. You don't have to pull this whole box to do that. You can see how dirty these things get over time and even beat up, even being inside here. You know, sometimes the factory isn't gentle, or if somebody pulls it out to, you know, replace the Dujamawachi. Okay, so I'm gonna lift the core out of here. lifted. Now you can see the stuff that collects in here. Don't ruin your styrofoam tray. Gently take that out. Now you can clean out the box. I will clean that out a little bit better when I'm not holding the camera in my hands, but get all the squirrel poop and mouse droppings and everything out of there. And then there's 2 screws here to pull off the expansion valve and replace that. The new one may not come with this padding. I have to check that. I don't know if I can salvage this. It's not strictly necessary, but it does help efficiency. Let's hope the new one has that. To clean out our egg carton there too. And so let's see what the new one looks like and make sure it's a fit and everything. And then we can put this box back together again. Here we have our new core, which does come complete with new insulation. Now I have to take this off, and these bolts all hold the expansion valve and evaporator and everything together. But they're steel bolts. This is all aluminum, so be really careful and don't snap anything. These have been in here practically since the dawn of time. I'm going to work some penetrating oil in there because I don't want to snap these off. Probably see how corroded they get. I mean, that's just, you know, it's dissimilar metals and just rust and gunk and all kinds of stuff in there. We're going to clean that up. Alright, got that one out. A little bit of cleaning is in order for these. May have taken out some of the aluminum threads there. I'm going to try to run a tap down across that, I think. That is an M5.8, looks like. And there's definitely chunks of aluminum stuck in there. Not too bad. That all cleaned up. Alright, that won't ruin the threads now when we put it back in. Got the expansion valve. Usually they put a nitrogen charge in these so they don't corrode or anything just sitting on the shelf. If you ever take one of these off and it doesn't have a nitrogen charge in it, don't use it. That would be my advice to you. This one also has rubber plugs, which is very convenient. Okay, we need O-rings. What you don't want to do is put the wrong O-rings on, because if you mess it up, it's very hard to fix later. I took the old ones off there. I'm going to compare them. Yep, that looks right. Remember, there's different thicknesses of O-rings too. To lubricate the O-rings. Don't install O-rings dry. Never, ever, ever. Alright, camera went dead there, but assembly is the reverse of disassembly. Don't forget to install your boot here properly, and don't forget to put your temperature probe back into the box properly. There's a little notch that it runs through there, and I think we're ready to slot this thing into the vehicle. Alright, so you got 3 things to line up your drain on the upper 2 lines. We come around and line up our lines here. So this panel has to come off. I'm going to pull this up because there's an overlap, and I'm going to start seeing if I can peel this up. I tried to get this seat out. It's not cooperating. I followed all the instructions, you know, lever 1, lever 2, etc., etc. It's not coming out, so I try to work around it, I guess. So there's 3 screws on this level here. One behind this panel here, and another behind that panel there. And you can pop out this plastic clip here, and then you're loose except for your cargo net clip thingies. The way you take these cargo clips out is there's an outer shell around here and a center pin. If you pull that outer shell, pop it out. It's got a center section, and when that center section drives down through, it spreads these and locks it in on the other side. So now, it's basically you just go along and unsnap that. Now the seat belt down here runs through the panel, so it's a little hard to take completely off, but I don't think we need to. I gotta rearrange this stuff and try to get that seat out again. So with that rear seat out of the way, finally, after much struggling, I mean, good grief, Toyota. Anywho, we can pull this panel back and we can finally get to the guts of the rear AC. So the heater core is up top here. The evaporator core is down here behind this panel. And probably, if yours has never been apart before, it's going to have all this insulating tape on here. You got to take the insulating tape off so you can get to this screw that holds this block on. And then down around here, I believe is you see where the expansion valve tube comes there. So we're going to have to strip off this heat tape and find the expansion valve as well. I believe it's under all that. This is really, really thick, strong heat tape. I think I'm going to have to cut it off. So after much cutting and removal, and this stuff is just hard as a rock with age. Loosen this bracket a little bit. You don't have to, but here's the expansion valve and the bulb. The temperature bulb is down there against the line and the clip. So all you got to do is unclip that and then clip the new one in. The rear expansion valve is out. The probe is just held on with a clip to the line. That's pretty standard with these probes. Careful with these, there's another bolt here. Okay, I'll take that out. Alright, I pulled the plate here. It does have a connector right there, so I'm going to go down underneath and pull that screw out, and then I should be able to disconnect this entire piece and pull the core out. So that's just a 10mm nut on the bottom of that. So I got this separated just by going down and pulling the line down off of this. Go. There we go. Okay. Back. There we go. Okay. If you take this apart, be real careful with this flaky insulation. You don't want to get it inside the lines if at all possible. So now I'm going to pull the core out. I can pull the cover off now. The probe comes with it. Careful not to damage that. Now, be able to gently work the core out of the box. And this one's actually pretty clean. Not near as dirty as the front. That's, I mean, it's not that close to the engine compartment. There's a little bit of stuff in there, but yeah, overall pretty good. We got the new core. We're just gonna slot that right in there. Alright. Now we're ready to take this off, put on O-rings, and put everything back together. I'm going to clean this up, put the O-rings on here, and then there's another O-ring down there where it came off. Gonna slide down there and replace that O-ring, and then we're gonna start putting it back together. I have all the O-rings replaced and fittings cleaned and everything, and we are ready to reinstall this. Order of operations. I'll go down underneath and put that one on. I got that sealed back up. Put this on while I can still get to it. And we'll put on our expansion valve. Alright, now we got to get back in. Just gonna go like this. Okay, so alright, I got that clipped in. Should have done that since I had that piece out. Should have done that then, but yeah, hindsight and all that. Got the expansion valve on. Now remember, the O-rings seal that. You want it nice and snug because, you know, heat and cool expansion cycles. But, you know, don't crank the snot out of it because this is aluminum and brass. I'm not going to put all this ancillary stuff back on until I can leak test it. And I'm going to have to put, well, I don't have to, but I'm going to replace the thermal tape around there once I have it leak tested and hopefully operating. So I'm doing this whole job in order of kind of hardest to least hard, or trying to anyway. So the next step is we need to replace that compressor, and then we can move on to the really easy stuff in the front here, the condenser and everything. For that, there's two lines. There's the high and low pressure lines on the side here, and since they're rubber, we can just kind of disconnect them and pull them away. There's the electrical connections. Of course, they're easy. We got to take the belt off, and then we can finally pull the bolts holding the compressor on. So there's the new compressor. You can see the lines there, and you can see there's two bolts either side, and then there's this one up top that my hand is blocking. So we kind of need to snake down around in there, and I'm gonna get the belt off. Now on this vehicle they also asked me to replace the belt tensioner, which is buried down there behind the radiator hose. Let's get the belt off of here by basically putting a socket on the end of that and taking the tension off the tensioner, and then I can take the belt off. So I've decided, well, number one, to wear gloves because it's blazing hot out here, and anytime I touch a tool I'm burning my hands. Alright, long story short, don't do a tensioner on one of these things, it's a mess. So you got to pull both the alternator and the power steering pump, because a bolt that goes through the alternator also goes through the tensioner housing. And to move the alternator forward to get off the stud, you got to pull the power steering pumps. You got to pull both of those, and you got to pull this timing cover housing and this timing cover housing, and once all that's done, then you can get it off. The reason you have to pull those housings and stuff is because there's an overlap around the edge there that the plastic goes over, and you can't just worm it out. And these two bolts here, this one and this one that hold on this timing cover, also go into the water pump. So yeah, that's no fun. Hopefully I got the water pump sealed back up. I don't know, we're gonna find out. I'm gonna pull everything, electrical and everything, off the compressor first, so I don't forget when I'm, you know, down there yanking on it. And I'm gonna pull the AC lines off and temporarily plug them and tuck them, and we'll get to the bolts. So the lines are off, and as soon as I take a line off, I immediately tape it because I don't want any junk getting in the system at all. So I believe everything is disconnected from the compressor. Tuck this back out of the way or something. Get over there. Oh no, okay. So now we can pull the bolts for the compressor and drop that off. Alright, I took the bolts out. There were only two. There was one missing. So let's see if we can ease this on out of here. Compressor out. Well, I'm gonna grab the new one and slide it into position. Alright, I got it hanging there. This metal clip kind of helps to temporarily hang it on the back of this housing there to get it lined up. I'm gonna crawl down underneath and try to slot some bolts into place. Alright, that was pretty easy. Got it bolted in. We'll just plug this back in before we forget. Alright, lines are back on the compressor. And that's all buttoned up. New O-rings. So, what's next? All of this in the front. And I guess we can put the belt and all that back together. I won't bore you with that, but just a reverser removal. I am going to clean this pulley up a little bit. This is a burned belt. I'm going to clean that up a little bit before I put it back on. So starting on the front, I'm going to take off everything basically in front of here. The horns need to come off, this fan needs to come off, this cooler I'm going to pull, and it has flex lines so I can kind of hang it towards the front. I'm going to take the hood latch off, and I'm going to take this strut assembly off here. Then last I'm going to take the accumulator off because we're replacing that anyway. And I still haven't decided what we're going to do about this. I don't know if I showed this, but when I was going over the vehicle and I went to vac the system out, my high side was leaking pretty bad, and it's because we got a lot of nicks and grooves on this thing. I don't know what's going on there, but I'd have to replace this section of the line here. Not sure yet. Pulled everything and set it aside. Basically I just flipped the fan up, took the horns off, draped this forward, and we'll work around that. This is a transmission cooler. And now we're going to pull the connections for on the condenser, and then we'll lift the condenser out. I just pulled the condenser out after disconnecting the lines. Here's the new one. Looks like it does come with feet. That's good. I have to take these out. Don't need those. Yeah, looks right to me. Everything's in the right place. Okay, let's slide that in. Alright, that slid into position. And now we can start replacing these O-rings. Just bolt everything back to the condenser again and start bolting stuff back on. Started hooking up AC lines. I hooked up the new accumulator here and these two connections, and of course the last two connections, the one at the accumulator and the last one at the condenser, I'm waiting on, because of the status of this port being boogered up, to replace that line or not. I'm not sure. We'll figure out what the customer wants to do, but that can be done after everything else is in here. So I'm going to get everything else bolted in place in the meantime. So there's everything put back on there. I haven't put any of the interior back together yet because I want to be able to, leak test in the general area around there and, around the back here. I want to be able to get my tester in there to be able to actually check, make sure all the O-rings are seated and correct. Up here, all the connections I touched should be pretty accessible. I can get my sniffer down there, and obviously around these connections and everything and up there. So I did not replace this Schrader valve. We're going to do that. I have to buy one. I don't think I have the proper one. Well, this Schrader valve was definitely leaking because I saw bubbling when I took this cap off the first time. So we're going to replace that. Let's take the bigger kind of Schrader valves. Goes in there. We'll just tighten her down. The customer managed to find a replacement line with the valve in it. So that's what we have here. They are horrifically expensive, brand new, I'm sure. I don't know what he paid for it, but they are not cheap. So don't mess up your valve ports in any way if you can help it, because you know this is all one piece. So let's install that. Now if you're installing one of these, this is a fixed metal line, and this new accumulator is shorter, so it doesn't fit right in both clamps exactly, and you got to set the height right. So it's best if you kind of leave it loose as you tighten these up. That way the angle of the line can kind of adjust itself. You don't want to get one of these installed at the wrong angle or something. All right, we got that seated correctly there. So now I'm going to clamp the clamps down. As you can see, the taper on the bottom here, only the top of the clamp is going to work, but that's fine. It's just kind of holding it in position. It's not overly critical, and the top of the clamp is squeezing it. So just be aware, if you're buying one of these accumulators, try to get the longer ones if you can, because the shorter ones don't fit very well in here with the metal lines. You can't lower them unless you bend lines, so which I'm not willing to do. And now we're ready to vac this down and see if it'll hold a vacuum as the first step. All right, we got the electric vacuum pump hooked up, and we're almost at 20 inches of mercury. It's still climbing. It's gonna take a bit to vacuum this out because I've had all the parts out, and obviously it's been exposed to the air. So what we're gonna do is vacuum that down for about half an hour as a preliminary, and then we'll close the valves and shut the pump off, and we'll see how well it holds. And that'll be the first test before we shoot any gas or anything in it. So if you look for the spec sticker, which most cars these days have, the minimum of 134A is 2.2 pounds and the maximum is 2.4 pounds. So we're going to try to start for the minimum at 2.2 pounds. So we've been vacuuming for a while, and I shut her off just to see how well she'd hold. We are going to vacuum a little bit more, but I just want to check seal integrity at this point. So I'm going to let it sit here static for a bit. Also let my pump cool off since it's so blazing hot out here. And if this holds, then we will proceed with the final vacuum. It's the final vacuum. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Beep boop beep boop, beep boop beep beep beep. All right, she's been running a while, and we do have the vacuum down to about 27, 28 inches of mercury. So she's getting better. Something to remember with these systems is if they have a rear AC system, you got all those lines and the stuff in the back that you got to vacuum out too. So you might want to allow a little bit of extra time for that. So we'll give our pump a break because it's like 100 degrees out here. We're in the middle of a heat wave. Got the valve shut, and again, we'll see if it holds this even higher vacuum. Higher? Lower? You know what I mean. Higher number, lower air content. Okay, I put in the oil charge. Now, near as I can find, this thing holds 8 ounces approximately of oil. The tag on the compressor said 5.3. When I vacuumed it, it's so far away from the compressor, I didn't seem to get any oil out of the compressor. So I put in about 3 ounces of oil, and that'll get us somewhere in the neighborhood of 8, which is on spec. Yeah, unfortunately, because I'm taking their word for the oil in the compressor, I had to wing it a little bit, but I think it'll be okay. I mean, I hope, if their tag is accurate, which I sure hope it is. Okay, so our starting weight is 16.3 pounds. Where's my notebook? I'm gonna do some math on that, and we'll put in 2.2. All right, we're down to 14.2. That is about 2.2 pounds. So let's shut this off for the moment. Where are we at for temperature? It is slowly coming down. We're at about 65 there, and I think that's all this goes down to, 65 degrees. The thermostat on here. About 70 on the back. So that's about right, but we're gonna get my leak tester out here and we'll go over it. I'll shut the vehicle down, and it is ever so slowly equalizing, so that's good. That means the expansion valves don't seem to be sticking. All right, got my leak tester. Let it take an equalized reading here. All right. We did replace a lot of the O-rings and so forth, so basically going to go over every possible connection that we can. I also like to check my manifold ports just to make sure, because that can throw off some of your stuff too. I can't get a close reading around here to the actual lines, but we can kind of check in the general area. Let's try back here again. Not getting anything. That's good. So now that we've verified all this, I can put this back together and put the thermal tape back on. Now, you can leave it that way without the thermal tape, but it will never be as efficient because the probe on that line back there needs to be registering the temperature of that line, not anything around it. And this line nearby will be hot and this line will be cold, so there's a temperature difference. So if you get temperature averaging out between the two or something, your expansion valve setting, it won't be correct and it won't run at the correct temperature or where you want it. So I've screwed the cover back on and I've applied thermal tape. They've already got good insulation on here. Put thermal tape around all the probe and the expansion valve like they had it. Normally I don't thermal tape the entire expansion valve, but that's the way the factory did it. So that's the way I'm redoing it in this case. So now I can put some of these covers back together. All right, this is back together. That's easy enough. It goes together a lot quicker than it comes apart. All the screws and covers back on. So hopefully we're done back here. I'm starting to put the dash back together. Got my ductwork back together. And now I can start putting on the fascia and glove box here. I got the panels and everything back together. You know, that was just the reverse of removal. So one thing I wanted to note, I'm operating the AC again as a double, triple check. And pressures are still same as they were last time, but the condenser fan is not coming on. That should be coming on and helping our cooling efficiency, so I need to look at that. All right, so the condenser fan. So if you check out the plug here for the meter, we're getting full voltage at the plug, but we don't get anything at the fan. So I'm pretty sure the fan is dead. Let's play with this fan a little bit. Oh, well, she wants to go. Come on. I think the bearings in this thing are bad. I mean, it's going. I don't know if that'll help our efficiency with that fan in the condition it's in, but we're coming down to. getting there. Give it a couple of minutes to cool down. Another thing to check out is this valve here. I'm getting heat on both sides of the valve. Let's see, it goes this way, but I'm getting heat on the back side of the valve as well. It's like it's not shutting off. I'm getting heat through the heater core as well, which can hurt efficiency. As far as this valve goes, it wasn't completely shutting. It was close, but it wasn't complete. And I actually took it off and ran a hose through it to check it. And when it's just a hair open, it actually lets a good bit of liquid through. It's not so much a ball valve as it is a rotational tube in there, and it rotates the tube. Anyway, it has to be completely closed or it still lets a good bit of liquid through. So I mean, it's still warm over here, but there's really no pressure. See, I can squeeze this hose but not this one, and I can hold this one, but this one is just burning hot, not like before where they were about the same temperature. So that's good. We're getting some airflow through there now. Maybe we won't be quite as hot on the condenser. It's still pretty hot. Ideally, I would like to get more airflow through it. I'm going to take it for a drive and see what it does on the open road here in a minute. All right, let's take this for a spin, and so we know how it performs at idle on a hot day. Come on here, get in there. Let's see how it does with more air going through the condenser. We're getting down to, we're down to 65 already here, so that's good. It's a really hot day. It's 90 something today, so yeah, we're approaching 60 here with the rear AC off, so it's doing much better. Turn the rear back on. It's still maintaining that 60 degrees, so actually it's quite nice in here. I think one thing for sure I'm going to recommend to the customer is to replace that condenser fan, because it's on its last legs, and it certainly contributes to efficiency. I mean, we were getting 70 degrees tops without being able to use the condenser fan, but I got the condenser fan going, and it dropped it a few degrees, so it definitely needs it. So it's maintaining this temperature with the front and rear AC going. Like I mentioned before, the rear AC, you can't shut off the heater core, so there's heat going through the box 100% of the time, which is horribly inefficient. Now that's running full blast. If you turn the fan down and don't pump as much air through the evaporator core, once it's cooled down, you can actually get some colder temperatures out of it, because you're not removing the air as fast, the cold air as fast from the evaporator, so sometimes you can actually get colder temperatures if you back the fan off. Colder vent temperatures. I don't know if you'd actually cool the vehicle down faster, but basically it'd be like, you know, if you didn't run a fan through it at all, you wouldn't be pulling any cold air out of the evaporator, so the evaporator would be really cold. So as you back the fan speed down, yeah, see, we're dropping below 60. So, you know, you could probably get 40-50 degree air out of this if you back the fan way down. But I've been doing all my testing at max, everything maxed out, fan speed, front and rear, everything. So, all right, let's head back to the barn and recommend that the customer change that condenser fan. Yeah, see, we're dropping down below 60, so it's working pretty good. It's just when you run it at full tilt, that's what you're going to get. You know, you're going to get 60 degrees. to the barn. See if I can shove her back into the corner again. Is my heat seat? Oh, my heated seat was on. Well, at least I know that works. Squeeze her back in here. Yeah, this fan is just, it's crapping out. You can see it's slowing down there. Yep. Alright, get my gear here. If you made it this far in the video, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate all of your input, comments, questions. We really appreciate subscriptions. Helps the channel grow. Any likes, comments, questions you have, leave them down there below. And as always, thanks for watching.